All right, welcome in everybody. Welcome. We've got streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So if my eyes dart around a little bit, I'm just looking at each of the different people tuning in, and I just want to welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm going to discuss like the difference between yoga and dance. This is a common question I get. My wife is a dancer, is a retired dancer, yoga teacher right now. A lot of times when I post a video of myself flowing. People ask if I was a dancer in my before I was a yoga teacher, and the quick answer to that is no. I was never a quote unquote dancer. I was a musician, which is definitely very different. And people ask me, "Am I still a musician?" Why do I say I was a musician? And the answer is very similar to. I want to bring attention to the fact that in my mind, to be a musician means that I am practicing and evolving and growing my craft as a musician, which I'm not anymore. I'm no longer practicing. I'm not. So I wouldn't want to pull down the word musician because the people that are musicians right now that are working really hard, I wouldn't want to diminish that. Same thing with dance, right? So dance is a performance-based practice that is, yes, it is a practice that is then utilized for performance. So let's just define the difference a little bit here from my perspective. The difference between dance and yoga. Dance is a focus on movement, on transitional actions, not necessarily, and it can include, of course, static postures. But when we think of dance, it's more often we're thinking of the movement between static postures and the gracefulness that one would show as they are in transition between poses and their alignment per se through transition, which we know as human beings can be very hard. I want to just bring this little topic in here as we're discussing the difference between dance and yoga, because what I have coming up in for the month of February is an immersion called The Dance, and it's like, subtitle Align Your Flow. And why it's Align Your Flow and called The Dance, this is something I want to talk about life. We all are realizing in from 2020 how graceful we move or non-graceful we move through transitions in our life. It's been a very big highlight for most of us. So raise your hand if you acknowledge that the transitional times of 2020 or in your life were challenging, and perhaps there might have been more ways to be graceful. And this is not a shame session like you should have done something differently or what have you, but rather to recognize that change, the movement from one place to the next, is very difficult. So let me know in the comments below, whether you're on YouTube or you're on Instagram or Facebook here, if you find it challenging at all to move through transitions in life. Okay, like we we get really good, and this is my opinion, and so I'm open to discussion here. Feel free to throw in some conversation. We get really good at eventually being in one place or another, and it takes time to settle into those places in our life, in our yoga practice, in our postures, and then we might get bored or we want change, and as change starts to happen, how gracefully do we move through that change? How easily do we move through that change? How well aligned with our intention are we as we saw with the pandemic? A lot of us might have been really in line with our goals or our intentions or how we wanted to feel in life, and then the pandemic hit and things hit the fan. And some of us really stayed aligned with our intentions, and others it was very challenging, very hard. So feel free to let us know which side of the spectrum you fall on. Again, there's no shame or guilt here. It's only about having this conversation that we recognize that some of us struggle with challenges of change and some of us thrive in it. Some of us struggle with staying still and thriving in that place of stillness where in the static posture. So the dance is about aligning through the transition and becoming more graceful in staying in alignment when change happens. That's what the February immersion is all about, and what I want to talk to you about today, the difference between dance and yoga. Okay, so in yoga, the way that I present the practice of yoga quite often is we get to a pose, and then we micro refine the movements within that posture. So we stay, or we train our mind to be more attentive, more alert, more awake to our physical patterns while we're in a yoga pose. So some of you that are here probably practice with me and are used to that style or that approach of alignment, technique, biomechanics within a given pose. Raise your hand if so. I'd love to hear from you. If you've been practicing the immersions, live stream immersions, then that's something that you're familiar with. Now, someone asked me the other day, and they said, "What about like flow? What happens? Is there a I forget the exact phrasing, but is there alignment when I move from one posture to another?" And when that question came up, I was reminded of back when I first met my wife, and she was a professional dancer, how she quoted one of her dance teachers that dance is the movement between the poses. So that was a really an eye-opening revelation for me. Dance is the movement between the postures, and he wasn't referring to yoga by any means, right? He was just saying that, and I might be misquoting him slightly, so apologize to my wife Rebecca and him if I'm getting that quite a little bit wrong. Um, but for our purposes here, is dance is the movement between the poses. Now you can be practicing yoga and doing dance, performing music, cooking. You could be practicing yoga doing anything. And I want to be really clear about that because, first, what is yoga? Yoga is the practice of self awareness that includes self inquiry, asking ourselves the questions, going deeper into our psyche. Yoga, by the way, is predominantly a practice of becoming more aware of the mind, and part of becoming more aware of the mind requires becoming more aware of our body. So it's about getting connected to our movement patterns, physically speaking, and emotionally, mentally, behaviorally speaking. So not just movement patterns in our physical body, but movement patterns in life. What happens when things start to move, when transition happens? Can we stay in alignment? And what I'm suggesting here is this is hard, that it is hard to stay in alignment through change. And that's why I felt like it's a good idea for the month of February, that a lot of us have gone through a lot of change in our life and we're continuing to go through it. So why don't we focus a little bit, put some of our attention on staying in alignment with our intention while change is happening all around us and within us. So that we can, it's not, again, I want to just kind of be clear, it's not about being perfect in our life. It's not about getting it right? But rather developing a more graceful approach to the way that we live. And we'll fall on our face and be ungraceful, and we'll have times where things don't line up for us or we don't align with life, and that is normal. But the practice of yoga, and keyword practice there, is consistently coming back to personal development, growth, and self-awareness. So yoga is self-awareness in the that's pretty much the gist of it. Now, all the practices of self-awareness, which include meditation, asana, pranayama, and so on, these are the practices that we do towards the goal, which is yoga, to unite, to be self-aware, and awareness itself. Let me put it that way. To unite with awareness itself. That is something magnificent that us humans have, awareness that is, that we're not always tapped into. We might be aware of objects or things around us, but awareness of awareness itself, that there is this energy that allows us to self-reflect and to witness. This is magnificent. Okay, I just have some true believer of perfection starts from within. Yes, okay, so I'm a true believer that perfection starts within. Yeah, and perfection to me, and I'm just going to say it here, is not necessarily anything other than stepping in to presence within all moments. And that again will mean sometimes falling on your face, making mistakes, having problems, being ungraceful. So perfection, because life is never perfect, nature is never perfect, we are never ever going to be perfect. Then the word perfection, when applied to us, is a process. Okay, a process of becoming more aware. That's the way that I like to define it, and you can come up with things that work for you and so on. So moving forward, the dance. What is dance? It's the movement or the paying attention to the experience and aligning ourselves from the one static point to the next. So it is the movement between the two static points. And this is very challenging for us because as movement starts to occur, we're so settled in our ways of where we were that it's hard for us to start moving towards where we're going. And we get impatient that we're not there yet. I remember when I was a little child, I think my mom's listening on Facebook. Hi, Mom, if you're here. When I was a little kid, we'd be going on vacation from home to this location out east on the eastern Long Island where it was, it's just I remember how lovely it was to get out there. But the ride out there, I'd be asking, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Impatiently not there, rather than being completely immersed in the experience of being in the car. And you can imagine being a child to be immersed in the experience of being a car is not exactly enjoyable when you have the excitement of where you're going. Now, this happens in the asana practice. This is why I created the February immersion coming up, why I'm offering it, is to pay attention to the transition from where we are now to where we are going. And not just in our life, as I have been sort of indicating is the major reason why I wanted to offer this immersion, but